G'day, it's Brenton from Lantheria here, and as you may have seen during the week, I have finally dropped the official announcement for my new EP, 5 Tales of Scoundrels, Heroes and Battlers. It's going to be available on October 18th on all the major streaming services. I am very excited for you to hear it. I'm very proud of what I've been able to accomplish on this record, so I'm keen to make a little bit of a video explaining about the concept behind it and the songs behind it and basically whet your appetite for when the thing comes out. I conceived the whole idea when I was up at my parents' house one day. I was looking at the huge family tree pictures that hang up in their dining room. See, my dad has a real passion for genealogy research and has unearthed a great deal of interesting stories and interesting people. So I asked him, who on here do you think is going to make for a decent song? And he said, oh, this person and that person and this person here. So I wrote down all of those names and I narrowed it down to 5 to match the 5 songs that I had already written that were just awaiting lyrics. So the record is about 5 members of my family whose stories I feel deserve to be told. The first song is the Ballad of the Gold Rustler. This one's about a man named Albert Dooley who was born in 1865 and died in 1933. He was my 3 times great uncle, and he worked as a jeweler in Birmingham, but the trick is that he was not an honest man. He did things like pass off 9-carat gold as 18-carat gold by swapping the gold marks out. Eventually, the assay office caught him at this, and when he learned that they were after him, he took off for Newfoundland to hide out with his cousin who lived over there. The authorities engaged the Pinkerton Detective Agency to chase after him and bring him back to justice, and the rest is history. There's one thing in Dad's collection of memorabilia that I want to show you. It's this file here, which is the detective's expense report from the chase, and it makes for some truly entertaining reading. For example, tip to man at entrance of steerage compartment to allow me to pass, 50 cents. Tip to understeward of steerage to enable me to reach the steward, 50 cents. Tip to steward of steerage for indicating John Dooley, he refusing to do so unless I offered him inducements, $2. The whole affair struck me as the sort of thing that swashbuckling folktales are written about, so that's the vibe I've tried to capture with this song. It is funny to me that despite this genre of music's tendency to tell tall tales, most of the lyrics in this one are pretty accurate to the story. The only real embellishment concerns Dooley's fate. He was indeed imprisoned at Dartmouth, as the last chorus indicates, but they certainly didn't throw away the key. He got away with serving 18 months at hard labour. Track 2 is Fellow Man, concerning my 4 times great-grandfather Worthy Nichols, born 1808 and died 1849. And Nichols is something of a tragic character. He ran a home for destitute men in Adelaide, but he was also an avowed socialist and also an atheist in a time when to be an atheist was quite unusual. He was also a prolific writer. He would often write letters into the South Australian Register and all sorts of other publications espousing his socialistic views. This made him a well-known figure in quite a bad way, and he was quite mistreated by his community. There was one instance where a drunken mob actually descended on his home while he slept, and he ended up having to escape out the window. And it actually got so bad for him that he started carrying around a firearm for his own protection. The song owes its existence to a particular letter that Nichols wrote to the South Australian Register explaining his position and imploring his community to treat him better. And I adapted the lyrics from the text of this letter. Unfortunately, it seems that the letter had little effect, as the man ended up taking his own life just a few short years later. I think this is perhaps one of the most human songs on the EP. It's a very simple message of a downtrodden man imploring his community for mercy and understanding. That's something that I think most people can relate to, and when I read the text of his letter to the newspaper, I almost felt a sense of duty to bring it to light. The third track is Rifle in My Hand. This was the first song that I wrote for the EP, and in fact I can still remember sitting on my parents' couch one Boxing Day, noodling around on the chords, and in fact that's why the working title of it was Boxing. The subject is my twice great uncle Percy Arnold Collins. He was born in 1896 and died in 1947, and like many young Australians and New Zealanders of his generation, Collins signed up to fight in World War I, only a few weeks after it began. He was away for almost the entire war, he survived the landings at Gallipoli, and he was part of the original group of soldiers who were chosen to take mandatory leave in 1918. He learned of the war's ending while he was still on the boat home. One of Dad's more ambitious genealogy projects was the transcription of a diary that Collins kept throughout the entire war. This was my main resource when writing the lyrics, and the last 2 lines of the song are taken almost verbatim from the final entry. I do feel compelled to point out that even though the lyrics of this song are quite weary and maybe perhaps even a little bit cynical, there isn't really any sort of anti-war message to be found here. I tend to avoid political themes in my music to begin with, and that's even more important here considering that the subject is a family member. This is simply one man's story told in his words as closely as I can possibly get it. Song number 4 is Chase the Sunrise. This is very recognizable as a Lantheria tune in my opinion, thanks to my addiction for open power chords. Our main character here is Louisa Wright. She was my 3 times great-grandmother. She was born in 1844 and died in 1919. She was around 16 years old when she emigrated from England to Tasmania in response to a "Seek Your Fortune Overseas" ad. Her troubles started almost as soon as she arrived. The port had been closed due to some sort of political mess, meaning she had to stay on the boat for 3 weeks in squalid conditions. After that, she spent several years in indentured servitude and also became a mother out of wedlock, which in that time obviously meant considerable hardship. Slowly but surely, Wright overcame all of this and dedicated her life to giving back. Among other things, she ran a catering business, she worked in a home for unwed mothers, and she also became involved in the women's suffrage movement. There's a church in Bendigo, Forest Street Uniting Church, that has a stained glass window dedicated to her memory. It became clear to me that Wright's life is best understood as a coming-of-age story. I saw her as a young, innocent, and perhaps naive adventure seeker who got thrown into the deep end of life and had to learn how to look after herself the hard way. The chorus of the song expresses this not necessarily as a summary of her life, but more of a lesson to the listener that we can all take to heart. The final song is The Railway Man, and at first I was really strapped for a subject for this one. Obviously, the family tree boasts no end of interesting stories and characters, but for the music I had written, nothing really reached out and grabbed me and said, "This is what you need to write this one about." And then, my grandfather died, so making the song a tribute to him seemed like a pretty easy decision. His name was Bob Gallagher, born 1927, died 2021, and I knew him as Pa. He worked for Victorian Railways all his professional life. He apprenticed as a fitter and turner at the Newport workshops and then worked as an engineer in all sorts of placements. 2 noteworthy examples would be the extension of the standard gauge line from Albury down to Melbourne, and he also worked as a coordinator of operations for the building of Melbourne's City Loop. By the time he retired, he was general manager of the whole organisation and in fact was the last in that position before VicRail split in 1983. Something that was really important to me for this song was that it have no hint of melancholy, which is especially important since he died so recently. I based the lyrics on a speech that the man wrote himself, talking about his career, and that really helped to make it sound more like a retirement toast than a eulogy. Now, those of you who know me will know that I am a massive train nut, but oddly enough, I don't get it from Pa. He was great at his job, obviously. He enjoyed it. He left an indelible mark on Victoria's railways. But at the end of the day, it wasn't his passion in life. And to me, that really reinforces the idea that you don't need to mix business and pleasure to lead a life well lived. So there you have it. 5 songs about 5 remarkable people with 5 compelling stories. I do hope this video has gotten you absolutely champing at the bit for when the EP comes out. I cannot wait for you to hear it. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Brenton from Lantheria. See you later.